right, guys, so let's get into it. Talking about therapy today. Therapy. I started therapy in May of 2019. Ever since I was a little kid, I've had general anxiety. And I vaguely remember going to a therapist maybe once or twice when I was a kid, but nothing ever consistent. And I don't remember anything that happened in those sessions really. So essentially I've been walking around for almost 40 years with just like unresolved stuff. A lot of that came to a head in May of 2019, and I have always, I guess, kind of thought that I could handle my problems on my own. And, you know, for the most part, I can, but there is nothing wrong with seeking out a professional to talk to give you other tools to cope. So that's why I started going. And I've been telling everybody that will listen how phenomenal it's been, because it has. It's been eye-opening in more ways than I could have ever imagined. I was very apprehensive about going. I had already created stories in my mind about some person, stranger, wanting to push a ton of drugs on me, and I didn't want to do that. So that was sort of the story I told myself as to why I hadn't gone to therapy in all this time. Like, whenever things got really rough, it was like, okay, maybe you should talk to somebody. Well, they're gonna put me on drugs and I don't wanna be on drugs. So, and there's nothing wrong with medication. That was a story that I created for myself, for me, and I didn't want to go for that reason. So two of the biggest things that I've learned from therapy and that I share with people is, number one, we don't always process trauma as trauma. And this was something that I remember us talking about very early on, because when you initially go to a therapist, they sit down with you. Like, in hindsight, I know I probably just walked in there and just started vomiting. Like, I just kind of reached my breaking point and I just spilled everything from current to childhood to everything. And you know, if they're a good therapist, they take that information and then they kind of chop it down into blocks and like help you sort through it, and then kind of give you techniques to deal with each of those things. But there were things that came up that I had not processed as traumatic. And I think for me, that's because, and like a lot of people, because I've shared this with other people, I think that we often categorize trauma as physical assault, sexual assault, or abuse in those areas. It's physical, or if you were in an accident and you were hurt or something like that. We process trauma as these physical inflictions on us. And there are other things that are traumatic. There are other things that cause us trauma, and we don't even process them as trauma, so we don't deal with them as traumatic. There were things that came up where, you know, I would tell her what happened, and she would say, you know, that's trauma. And I'd be like, well, it's messed up, you know, it sucked, but I mean, you just got to keep moving. And she was like, yes, you should keep going, but you should still process those feelings. And there were a lot of unprocessed feelings that I just had not unpacked. So that's the one thing I tell people. There are things that have happened in your life, usually in childhood, that may have been traumatic to you and you don't even realize they're trauma. You may justify them. You may say to yourself, well, you know, that's just how it was. It's messed up, but that's just the way it was. And what you're gonna do, you gotta keep moving. You can't be hung up. You gotta unpack that. You gotta find time to like process that, you know, whether that was being made to do a lot of things as a kid that were probably too much responsibility at a young age. That may not seem traumatic, but it could have an effect on you to where you've always felt like you have to be the savior, like you've never been allowed to have somebody take care of you. Or it's these type of things that, you know, a good therapist will help you to process. The other thing that I really, really appreciated about therapy was, you know, and I'm sure this is in other cultures, I'm not sure, but, you know, for me, being African American, if you were to go to, you know, let's say you're elders in the family, your aunts, your uncles, your grandparents or whatever, and express certain feelings about things that happened in your childhood. You are likely going to be met with, well, your mom did the best she could, or your mom and dad did the best they could. There's no playbook. You don't know, da 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 da. I understand all that. But those situations still make me feel like this, and I need space to be able to say that and be able to unpack that and be able to sort through that. Saying that certain things in your childhood made you feel a certain type of way is not disrespectful to your parents. It's really not. It doesn't mean that you don't appreciate what they did for you. It doesn't mean that you don't love them. It just means that those are feelings you had that need to be processed, and that's fair. And to me, that was one of the great things about seeing a therapist. I could say how I felt without any sort of rebuttal. You know, I was just allowed, I'm allowed, because I'm still currently going, I'm allowed to speak my mind and say, you know, without fear somebody's gonna be like, well, you're being ungrateful and you just don't know how hard it was, or you don't know behind the scenes what was going on. No, I don't. Because I was a kid, just like other people. And we're talking specifically about childhood stuff and maybe some issues you may have had, because a lot of us had that. You were a child. No, you didn't know what was going on behind the scenes, because you weren't supposed to know what was going on behind the scenes, because you were a kid. And so now you're finding, you're seeking space to unpack that, because you're an adult now maybe. And that's fair. That's okay. That's okay. I've told 3 people specifically in my life that, and you know, a couple of them have gone on to go to therapy, and they're doing great. Connecting the dots, making stuff make sense. There were things, you know, my personality is, I guess, type A. I'm strong-minded, I'm strong-willed. I can come off a little hardened, I guess. And there were things that if you have a good therapist, they can help you to identify why you move a certain way. You know, it's not to change you. It's not to make you not be like that. It's just to help you figure out, you know, why you do some of the things that you do. This can be helpful in your personal life. It can be helpful in your professional life. Why you feel uncomfortable speaking up. Why you feel intimidated by certain types of people. Why you feel insecure in certain type of situations. Sitting there and sorting through 20, 30 years of just unresolved stuff can really help shed light on why you do certain things you do, or why you don't do certain things. You know, one of the things that my therapist brought home, we had a major breakthrough back in, I think it was November or December. And she was like, you've been operating in survival mode. This is why you do X, Y, and Z. And it's okay to want to work hard and to have a strong work ethic, but it's not okay to run yourself into the ground. Like you gotta do it a different way. And then we talk through what that looks like. So, man, I think therapy is amazing. I really do. And I personally, I'm just saying this as a disclaimer, I'm not on any medications. So I say, I give this disclaimer to people that, like me, may have a fear of that. This is not to get down on anybody who's on medication, because we all have different needs. We all have different needs. Our chemical makeup is all different up here. So it's not to come down on anybody. I'm just giving that disclaimer. Help anyone that has been fearful about therapy or apprehensive because they think the only way to do therapy is on medication. And that's just not the truth. You may get there and find that you can unpack on your own and you don't need it, or you may get there and your doctor prescribes it, but maybe they can give you reasons why. Maybe you guys can come up with a game plan. But I know for a fact there are people that are absolutely not trying to go to therapy because they're like, I don't want to be put on meds, so I'm not going. So that means I'm not giving myself a chance to talk about my feelings either, you know? So that's been great. It's also helped me to understand why I parent certain ways. So again, I have general anxiety, and my mother passed away in 2007. And after she passed away, my anxiety spiked. Like, it got out of her. I really should have started therapy then. Like, if at the latest, I should have started therapy then, and I didn't. I did very destructive things to cope with her death, and I didn't talk to anybody. I take that back. I talked to my cousin. I didn't talk to a professional. So she passed away before I had a child. And so now, as a mom, you know, my daughter is 4. I don't have the opportunity to kind of bring things home full circle with her present as to why this, or should I do this, or should I do this differently? And so in therapy, I've had a chance to run things by my therapist. One of my triggers for anxiety is safety. Like, in general, I don't feel safe. We're working on it. Like, we had a little breakthrough back in November. But before that, like, in that session, she asked me, she said, do you ever feel safe? And I was like, well, what do you mean safe? And she was like, do you just feel like safe? I was like, no, anything can happen anytime. I don't ever feel, just like in general, just feel safe. And that spills over into how I parent. And I noticed this specifically when I was just, me and my daughter were home and somebody came to the door. Now, whenever somebody comes to this front door unannounced, it used to make my heart race. Because if I'm not expecting anybody, why would somebody be at the door? That's just how I thought. So she was home with me one time and the doorbell rang and she ran and she hid. And she looked like her heart was racing. Like, her breathing was a little elevated. And she had the scared look on her face. And it was in that moment I was like, oh my God, like, I don't want to be, I don't know what they say when you're looking in like a mirror. Like, it bothered me. It bothered me. I didn't know why fully at the time. I just know that it bothered me. I want to teach her about stranger danger, obviously, in the proper way to deal with strangers, and obviously not to open the door and all this, but I don't want her to jump into a fearful state when the doorbell rings. I don't want it to be that way. So once that happened, I definitely brought it up in therapy. And so then that led us to talking about things between my mother and I, and certain points in our past where she would kind of drill a lot of safety things, you know, into me, which I know the intent was just for her to remind me to be safe. Watch your surroundings. Don't be walking around with 2 headphones on and your music loud. Don't be in the house with the TV too loud and you can't hear. You know, make sure when you're walking on the streets, you have a weapon. And I mean, this was when specifically when I moved to New York at like 22, didn't know anybody, I was single. Like, I get it. You want a young lady in a city with not really a lot of family, not a lot of friends, like, to be safe. I get that. But I do think that some of it could get, over time, maybe created a different effect. And while I absolutely want my daughter to always be safe, I don't want her to jump into fear. So that was one of the things that we talked about. And she helped me to get to the root of why I had inadvertently, consciously, subconsciously passed that on to my daughter, why I did, and how we could move forward in a healthier manner for me to teach her about safety. And so I'm very grateful for that. So I want to talk about real quick about how I found my therapist. And give some words of encouragement to people if they're looking. So I was in a all-women incubator for entrepreneurship 2018 for 15 months. So from the start of 2018 to the May of 2019. And one of the other women entrepreneurs was a therapist. And we had a pretty immediate connection, just personally. I mean, they gave you office space as part of the incubator. So we were all in this room together, sharing office space and bouncing ideas off of each other. And we would have, you know, monthly meetings, and her and I even, you know, work together on some stuff with her business. And like, we still talk. One of the things that we would have were community meetings. And I had shared in one something to the effect about my anxiety. And she pulled me to the side at one point and she said, you know, I can recommend a therapist if you want. And at the time I was like, oh, no, I don't want to be on drugs. Like, in my mind, I didn't say this out loud, but I was like, no, I don't want to do the therapist thing. I don't want people pushing drugs on me. I don't want to be on drugs. was like, you know, she had mentioned it a couple more times. And once I finally hit my wall, she was who I reached out to, because she had kept saying, you know, I think you're really gonna hit it off with her. I think you're really gonna hit it off with this therapist. She knew enough about me because we were in a unique setting where we were professional colleagues, but there were also situations where we had all shared very intimate details. So she knew enough about me, and I felt like she did to trust her when she said, you know, I think you're really gonna like this lady. If you're looking for a therapist, I got somebody to refer to you. I think you're really gonna like her. So when the time came, I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'm gonna do it. And she was right. She was right. From the first meeting, I'm real big on energy. So I was like, you know, trying to fill out the energy as soon as I walked in the room. And all the energy was very good and very positive. And I also I felt that the therapist was reading my energy. And I felt like that helped her to give me what I needed when I needed. Like enough push to get me to open up a little bit, but not too much. Because I don't like that. I don't like people pushing me to be vulnerable. I don't like that. If I'm hesitant or reluctant to be vulnerable with you, it's probably for a reason. I'm not comfortable yet. Either I'm not comfortable yet, or I don't trust you. And so the last thing that's gonna make me open up is you trying to push me to do it. And that just never happened with her. And I'm very grateful for that. So let me put these lashes on, because I can't talk and put these on. Okay, I'm back. I got my lashes on. Okay, so yeah, compatibility with your therapist. So again, I found her energy to be very compatible from the first session. I have given the advice to other friends that doesn't always happen. That should not be a deterrent for you to not go or to stop going. Sometimes it's just not gonna be a fit personality-wise, and it's okay to seek another therapist. I do remember my first session, that was how she prefaced the entire session. She was like, you know, this is an opportunity for us to get to know each other and to figure out if we're a good fit. And if not, that's okay too. So again, that helped to put me at ease so that I didn't feel this pressure either for fear of whatever, embarrassment, or just if you feel like, if you're the type of person that doesn't like to make people uncomfortable. You could find yourself sticking with a therapist you don't particularly care for because you think it's rude or inappropriate to like end the relationship, and it's not. This is your mental health, and you know, whatever you need to do to make sure that that's okay, that's what you should be doing. So I gotta mix two colors because I'm out of my color. So I got a little NC50 and a little NC45 till I could get on over to the Good Mac store to re-up, or NC42, sorry, not NC50, NC42. So yeah, man, I think, you know, therapy is great, and it's also helped me professionally. I found myself in my business not setting the proper boundaries with my clients. I have a digital marketing business, and I found myself not happy with my business last summer, and I had to ask myself why. And it really came down to some client engagements that weren't as positive as I had hoped. And I said, why aren't these positive? You got to ask yourself, break it down. What was the problem? Why didn't you feel good about this? Well, because I'm doing things and my team are doing things that we don't really want to do. Well, because I didn't set boundaries. Okay, well, why didn't you set boundaries? You know, that type of stuff. It's a process. You need to start breaking down why you're doing certain things, and you'll likely come to a conclusion, you know, and talking through that in therapy helped me. Well, why don't you feel comfortable setting boundaries? Why didn't you feel comfortable when you guys were discussing the scope of work to say no to this? You know, we talked about this in therapy. So from personal to professional, therapy has been just a tremendous game changer for me. And I'm so grateful. I'm so excited about what's to come. I'm excited about continuing, sticking with it and doing the work. You know, my therapist told me was it November, December, that she was proud of me, that I had been doing the work, and that made me feel really good. I don't usually stop and celebrate the small wins in anything, in my professional life, in my personal life. It's very rare that I stop and say, wow, Kelly, that's a good job. I just don't do that, and that's something else we gotta talk about. But I did do that, or she did that, and I allowed myself to feel that and be proud of myself for my role in doing the work, because it was work. You know, I also, one of the other stipulations I had when I went to therapy, I was like, I need somebody that does video, because I can't just be, I'm too busy. I can't be committing to going to see a therapist, like physically having to be there. I have too much going on. And I don't want to miss an appointment. I don't want to start canceling stuff. And so I just need somebody that's going to do video. And when I met with her, or when we first talked on the phone, she said, I do video. That's definitely an option. I do prefer that at least for our first couple of sessions, we meet in person. I said, okay. But I was still like, I can't be going to therapy every week, like driving to a place, committing to being there every week or every other week. But I'm gonna go to this one. I've not done a video session yet. All my sessions have been in office, and they will likely stay that way, because and mind you, she is about a 40-minute drive from where I live, but I have found so much value in our sessions, and I've gained, through her help, more of an appreciation for putting my mental health as a priority, and not just saying, well, I'm not gonna have time to go, so no, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go. I'm going, and you know, I'll figure the rest of the schedule out later. Work, clients, I can do this. I can find an hour and a half to take care of my mental health once every 2 weeks. Well, I'm gonna find it. So that's that, guys. I mean, if you're watching this and you're on the fence about therapy, definitely give it a shot. Actually, no, don't give it a shot. Give it a commitment, because I feel like we all need it. I really do. I don't feel like you just need it if you went through X, Y, and Z. Because again, there are things you've gone through that you haven't even processed as an issue, or like something that was a problem for you. So I think we should all be in there. All right. So this is the final look for today. Just a little cash. Recording my first Get Ready With Me video. Super pumped. Yeah, I'm going to meet a colleague for lunch really quickly, and then I have to come back and go through some resumes. We're expanding the team, which is really exciting. And that's it. So hopefully I won't procrastinate and I will get all this stuff edited and pushed out on the new channel. All right, thanks. Bye.